Welcome to Education Connect by Knovva, the podcast that explores innovative teaching methods and success stories, newsworthy updates in education, and current trends in the classroom. Whether you're a veteran educator, an industry thought leader, or a parent navigating the academic landscape for your child, we've got you covered. And hey, we know all about the hectic schedules in academics, so we're all about delivering content that's relevant, concise, and actionable. So hit that subscribe button and let's learn better together. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Education Connect by Knovva, the podcast where we learn from experts, innovators, and leaders in the world of education. A recent survey by high school educators revealed that students don't have enough downtime during the day. Come junior year, the pressure gets turned up for many high school students, between preparing for the SATs and college applications to juggling one or more extracurricular activity and even advanced classes. While education professionals agree that being busy with things you're passionate about is important, it's equally as important to get enough rest. I'm here today with Justin, an educator and thought leader in academics. He holds a master's in counseling and is certified as a college counselor through Columbia University. He's counseled over 500 students toward academic and personal success and pioneered a student-centered masterclass for 26 teachers. Hey, Justin.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for talking with me today. So your experience in education seems to be really student-centered, with a focus primarily on student success and identifying passions in high school. Tell me a bit about some of the students you've guided.
We'll just start with just my background. So I am based in New Jersey, born and bred. So I went to Rutgers for my undergraduate degree, and then I have a master's in school counseling from the College of New Jersey. My primary work experience has been in counseling. So I worked for more than 10 years at a STEM academy, a STEM magnet academy with very competitive admissions. Very familiar with high achieving students and sort of the pressures that they're under. Over my time working with a wide range of students, a lot of first generation families, so they're first time applying, sort of a lot of questions and unknowns of what to do during high school, and sort of the anxiety that comes along with that. A lot of students that identify as LGBTQ, with the acronym. Wide range of socioeconomic status, different ethnic backgrounds. So I've really gotten a good sort of lay of the land, in terms of diversity and how students sort of come to us as. Very similar in my role now as a private counselor, being able to work with many high achieving students. So very fortunate for that.
That's a really great thing that you brought up. Really the importance of understanding different students and perhaps the kind of backstory that they have, especially when it comes to something so, let's say, intense as college admissions or the end of high school. So many students are also grappling with other things going on in their lives outside of school itself. And so the pressures of taking on additional classes or advanced classes, taking on extracurriculars can really be a heavy burden for many.
Yes. I mean, the pressures that you never know what a student is walking into the door with. So whether it's issues at home, certain, family challenges, social media, friends are everything to a teenager. So conflicts with relationships, that's not to mention anything with the academic pressures and sort of the intensity around college applications, building your resume, competing against very other distinguished candidates. So, being a teenager has a lot more stressors today. And certainly in my role, from the time I started 2013, 14 until now, tremendous spike in mental health issues. And most educators will tell you the same, anxiety, depression. It's very hard to be all things at once. And that's, the pressure that, unfortunately, a lot of teenagers are facing.
That's really important to note, of course. So during this time that you've been a private counselor, you've also led several student-run organizations. Now, do you have a philosophy on extracurriculars or involvement outside of maybe school classes?
Yes, I mean, what I always say to students is that you're not just a student. And academics, especially, not to diminish their importance. Of course, their full-time job is to be a student. But a statistic I always like to cite is annually at Harvard, just for example, they will admit an incoming class of 2,000 students. 8,000 applicants have literally a perfect 4.0 GPA. 8,000 applicants have, so by definition, 6,000, a minimum of 6,000 of them, 75% of them are going to get denied. And those are students that have, a perfect academic record. Really the things that you're doing out of the classroom are vital, not only for your college application and building your profile, but more for your personal growth and your long-term success and relationships, finding your interests. Really, it's the things that you remember the most from high school, not so much what you learned in the classes, but more, the outside experiences that you had. Those you can really find your interests and your passions through what you're doing outside of the classroom. And of course, not to diminish inside of the classroom at all. That's number one. But I think a lot of times it can get disregarded or maybe not as considered as much as it should be, how important it is to be doing more than just focusing on SATs, ACTs, AP exams, doing things that are really unique and meaningful to the students.
It's more of a holistic experience in that case, maybe. You have to kind of
Yes,
see
absolutely.
many different pieces as equal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't think I answered your initial question, which is just as in my role as club advisor, really what I like to do is set like the guardrails or boundaries as far as, what the expectations are, but within that really give students a lot of freedom to, come up with their own ideas, to sort of, initiate leadership roles on their own, to take responsibility. And, they're still kids. So if they need to be checked on certain things or, maybe a little bit too ambitious with certain plans and logistics, those sort of real world practicalities. But I really believe in empowering students, within their roles. It's not about me as the advisor. It's about them as the student leaders.
That's wonderful. And so, with your guidance, a lot of students have gone on to study in universities like Duke, Johns Hopkins, and Stanford as well. So, what have you noticed about high performing students? And more specifically, is there something that they have in common?
And I don't say this lightly. You almost take the aptitude or the IQ, like, just the raw horsepower, the ability to do the work. You almost take that as a given. Go back to the Harvard statistic that I cited. Like if you're at a certain level intellectually, you know, so is everyone else when you're applying to those kinds of schools. So I think what really separates the ones that get in, the ones that are most successful, are I don't like the phrase, but typically they're called soft skills. And soft skills just they don't sound so important, but they really, really are. So the ability, your emotional intelligence, your ability to communicate, be empathetic, be a team player, not always necessarily put yourself first, but realizing, the needs of others. It's really those soft skills that really separate, one candidate from the next, one student from the next. That's not to say that like all of the nice ones get in necessarily, but, colleges are interested in building a community. They want, they don't want students that are just, going to class and going back to their dorm to play video games, no matter how brilliant they may be. So really having students that are, passionate about certain things and that will pursue those passions at a really high level.
Fantastic. Now, at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned a survey where, based on some responses from high school educators, they said that students typically don't have enough time during the day, sometimes not even for lunch. Do you agree with those survey results?
Absolutely, 100%. I can sort of see it from multiple different angles. When I was as a school counselor, one of my main roles was developing the school's master schedule. So basically all the classes that are going to run, who's teaching it, who's in it. very, very challenging. It's like putting together a big puzzle. So schools have a lot of pressure on themselves, within a limited amount of time, to get a lot done. Um, so there's certainly a lot of demands on the schedule. My school was fortunate that we had an hour-long lunch, which is definitely not the norm. So basically giving students an hour break during the day where there's a lot of freedom. They obviously need to eat, but if they have club meetings or they need to meet with teachers or basically it's like a study hall, lunch, recreation, recess, sort of all rolled into one. But I know that a lot of schools can't do that. So I've seen some schools where you're eating lunch at 10 a.m. or 10:30 a.m. I know in my high school, the first lunch rotation was at 10 a.m. It's not, it's breakfast time typically.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of those blocks are scheduled for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. So, you're waiting on a long lunch line. And by the time that you actually get to your table, maybe you have, 5 or 10 minutes to eat. Um, it's a really hard balancing act that students need a break during the day. You're waking up 5:30, 6 a.m. Our high school schedule in this country is very unnatural in terms of the timing. There's a big sort of wave of educators that would love to see, an 8:30 a.m. or a 9 a.m. start time instead of 7:30 a.m. So you just have a lot of those, sort of structural factors that go into scheduling. And then students during the day, just physically needing the energy, the mental break of sort of being able to wind down. If you have multiple tests in a day or a presentation, whatever the requirements are in your class, to be able to take a break during the day mentally, but then just to have physical fuel, to be able to get through a long day at school. From a nutritious standpoint, you need energy, you need gasoline, in the form of food. And then, not only are you trying to get to 2:30 or 3, but then after school, whether it's sports practices or music rehearsals, a lot of students are committed in their schedule, from the start of school to say maybe, 5 p.m. So it's the structural issues within the school and the scheduling logistics. And it's also students trying to do a lot, like some cases too much, where, maybe prioritizing, club meetings or checking in with teachers rather than eating and just taking a break. And, it's okay to stop. You can't just go, go, go all the time. So the results of those surveys definitely resonate with me. There's a lot of facts in that. Yes.
Mm. I think as educators, we do put a lot of emphasis on trying many different things in high school and identifying things that you feel passionate about, but as well on top of identifying passions and skills and ultimately maybe what you want to do as a career. We're also emphasizing the need to be doing well in school and on college applications. So there's so much to juggle, I think, for students at this age. What's your take on a busy high school schedule, in terms of perhaps maybe averages in the typical American school schedule?
Yeah. The key to me with everything is to find a balance. And too often students feel like they need to do absolutely everything to be this, well-rounded sort of jack of all trades where, you've done your resume is, filled to the max. The Common App gives students 10 spaces to list their activities. And I think the student mindset is I need to fill all 10 and I really need to have like 11 or 12. So this way I can, pick the 10 best of them. What I always tell students, it's quality over quantity. And colleges definitely reflect that in the language that they use is that they want angular candidates more than well-rounded candidates. So angular meaning that you have one or two really strong passions, areas of interest that you have really pursued deeply. So, if you are sort of a naturally well-rounded student and you do a little service, you do a little leadership, you play an instrument, that's great. That's fantastic. But you don't have to force yourself to be that. Just having a few activities that are really, important to you, that means a whole lot more than just having a list of, 10 or more activities that you sort of participate in at a superficial level. So early on in high school for students, a lot of it is exploration. You got to try things, see if you like it, see if you don't like it, and then hopefully by the time you get to junior or senior year, you're a little bit more established in what you like, what you don't like, and you're able to advance projects, you know, on a more advanced level than you were as a freshman or sophomore.
That's great advice. Now, as it stands currently, for maybe the typical high school schedule, have you seen the effects of an overly busy day in some of your current or former students?
Um, Absolutely. So, and in many different ways. So one, even though this isn't my role necessarily, I'll just reference the school nurse. We work together in schools, typically the nurse, the counselors, the principals, all work, hand in hand together. So a tremendous spike in just nurse visits to the nurse's office, whether it's falling asleep in class, upset stomach, headaches, psychosomatic kind of symptoms. A lot of it is, you know, more stress and mental than actual physical, but it sort of manifests itself in physical symptoms. Um, so that the nurses, I couldn't tell you a specific number, but just in informal observations, she's a lot more busy now than she used to be, and a lot of that is due to sort of the stress that students are carrying with them during the day. From my end, really what I would see would work with more directly would be the mental health, the rise in mental health issues. Like I noticed, like I mentioned before, with anxiety, depression, ADHD has obviously become more prevalent. So all of these factors, they're definitely related to, or all these issues, I should say, are definitely related to student schedules, and it's sort of the trickle down effect of, you're not having a well balanced experience. A lot of teenagers they're going to sleep, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. to wake up at 6, or they're going
Horrible.
home and taking naps, and
Mhm.
just your whole cycle can very quickly, get turned upside down. A lot of times with teenagers, it could lead to isolation, where you're too focused on academics and sort of isolating yourself, not engaging with friends. Just the typical going out on a Friday night. That's something a lot of high achieving students. No, no way. There's no way I'm going out, to see a movie with my friends on a Friday night when I have to, you know, do more SAT prep for the SAT that's in 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm.
Um, so it's some of those factors. And then another big one that I want to make sure I mention is just the decision making. Teenagers are still developing that sort of long-term consequence. They can't necessarily see the long-term impacts of their short-term actions. And it definitely leads to some, poor in the moment decisions, and academic integrity being one. And then, unfortunately, substance abuse, taking performance enhancing stimulants, perform like almost like sports steroids would be like that, the Adderalls or Ritalins, that sort of class of drugs.
Mm.
And just looking at some stats beforehand, I'll just use Harvard again. 40% of Harvard students admit to cheating, and 30% of them admit to taking a stimulant drug during their undergraduate experience. So if you're getting
Mm.
that many that admit it, even though it's anonymous, the numbers are certainly much
No.
higher. So I think all of this you can draw a straight line between you know all these issues and the fact that kids are just doing way too much and don't have enough time to be with friends and sleep and be happy. Kid, you're
Mhm.
still kids at that point, and a lot of times they just it doesn't feel that way.
That's really significant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems that it's pretty clear, but what's the general consensus among educators about this issue?
Um, it's always hard to find a consensus. So
Yeah.
I can, again, just based on my past experience, I can see exactly where the teachers are coming from, and I can see exactly, where the students are coming from. For the teachers, they're under a lot of pressure to meet state standards, for their students to perform well on, state testing. A lot of their evaluations are directly tied to, how well their students do on those tests. AP, advanced placement scores, IB scores, those all get reported out. And, students, or whether teachers at fault or not, they would certainly be they would certainly be blamed if their cohort of students goes from averaging a 4 on AP Calculus BC to now a 3 on AP Calculus BC. So teachers definitely they want to maximize their time, their instructional time in the classroom,
Mhm.
based on all of the different demands that they're facing. But then you get to the point of diminishing returns where it's not necessarily quality over quantity. So keep having the students in classes for so long, cutting down on their lunchtime, that sort of that break time that they get during the day. Students want more freedom, they want more control. They want the ability to sort of do their own thing, and that is high school is a very restrictive environment. So you definitely feel that push and pull where students want to do their own activities, and school can sort of feel like a chore, where they're so busy with their own stuff that why are you bothering me with this excess work is the mindset of a lot of students. So it's a hard balancing act. It really is hard, and you could see both sides of it, and it's all about finding a middle ground that works for everyone.
Mm. What are some solutions that you might think of in terms of a really busy schedule during the day where students don't have really the freedom to sit down and relax and just kind of even take a breather?
Right, right. First, for the teacher's end, and it's a lot easier said than done, is really being strategic in how they assign homework, and what's really useful or meaningful. Um, a lot of teachers that I've worked with before have implemented what's called a flipped classroom. So basically, students are doing viewing lectures or reviewing instructional material outside of the classroom. And then when they're in class, it's more problem solving, doing more of the hands-on stuff. Um, so definitely it makes more of the classroom experience, but it also gives students more control over their schedule because they know if they have to watch a 1 hour homework lecture, then they could easily block out an hour. Where sometimes if you're doing especially physics or calculus or some of those higher end problems, you could stare at a problem for an hour and not get
Yeah.
anywhere.
Oh no.
So that tends to be. I'm not a math person, but that tends to be a good model. Um, just to homework's important, but assigning students 50 math problems to do when maybe you could do 10 or 15, that still capture their core content, I think is really important. Um, and then for students, it's hard because you don't quite know where you're going, but having as far in advance as you can to do some long-term planning, whether it's for a marking period, whether it's for a year, that's typically what I would suggest. What do I want my freshman year to look like? What do I want my sophomore year to look like? And then sort of plan, from behind, or begin with the end in mind. So you sort of plan backwards from, what do I want to have accomplished by June of my freshman year, and how am I going to get there? A lot of times you can sort of just go where the wind blows, and there's some advantages to that, being flexible and saying, "Oh, this looks good. Let me try that. Let me, explore this." And then before you know it, you end up with too much to do. So for that's a big thing that we work with students at Knovva, in terms of advising them is, what do we want this to look like? There's a finite amount of time. You got to leave yourself some room for exploration where you're gonna, you could try the yearbook club. You might have an interest in photography or creative arts, and then you do the yearbook club for marking period and you hate it. That's okay, but we're gonna do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, we're gonna try to do that freshman year.
Yeah.
So really, the planning piece of it, I think, is so important, because you can't control the homework that teachers are going to give, or sort of the amount of homework or tests that you're going to have to study for. You have to respond to that, but you do have a lot more control over your outside of the classroom schedule. So that's a big part of what we work with on students, is sort of being strategic, as strategic as you can, with those extracurricular activities. But you also want to leave some freedom to sort of just explore your passions, like, again, giving yourself some downtime. So I'm a big believer in scheduling your breaks, or scheduling when it is that you're going to turn off. But it's a lot of time management, and long-term planning that comes in with that.
And my last question for you, in regards to any students who are juggling a few different projects, advanced classes, extracurriculars, or so forth, perhaps if they're having any challenges managing their time currently, besides what you just noted, are there any suggestions you could offer them for, potentially managing their schedule a little bit more or finding ways to take breaks?
I won't get into this in too much depth because we could do a whole episode on this, but just the use of technology and cell phones and social media. Um, so often you are controlled by it rather than you taking control over. So, very easily you're streaming down a feed on Instagram or pick your own platform, and before you know it, 4 o'clock is now 5:30, and you've lost an hour and a half, and you sort of don't know why. So definitely managing when you're going to engage with social media or the internet. It's a big distract. It's a wonderful tool, but it's also a hideous distraction at the same time. So taking some control over how you're using technology rather than you being controlled by it. And another thing I always tell students is to put first things first. What is your top priority? What is most important for you to get done on a certain day or a certain week, whatever the case is, and just make sure that gets done to the best of your ability. And if that means that some stuff towards the end of your list doesn't get done or doesn't get done as well as it could be potentially, then that's okay. You can't do everything, but you want to make sure that your big stuff is that's where your energy and time is going to, and then whatever time's left over, that sort of goes to the smaller stuff. So prioritizing, time management, they sort of go hand in hand with each other.
Amazing.
It's not easy. Easier said than done. It's a life skill that we all sort of are always working on, is the ability to just manage time and tasks. And it's not a teenage thing, but it definitely impacts them for sure.
No, but maybe it's a good time to start setting some good foundation for time management.
Yes. And my biggest advice is always that high school, it's a short amount of time. It's for a lot of kids, it's not necessarily the best 4 years of their life. Hopefully it's, there's more good than bad. But college really opens up a whole new world to them. Just in terms of scheduling alone, like you're not spending 35 or 40 hours in classes, maybe you're spending 10 to 15 hours a week or, something like that. So you just get so much more control over your schedule and just your overall day-to-day life that high school, it is what it is, and you want to make the best of it while you're there, but it's not forever, and a lot of times kids don't realize that it goes quick, and you're going to have a lot more time on your hands once you get past that stage.
That's great advice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Justin. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. This was a very timely topic, very important. So I'm hoping that the students can walk away with some helpful advice.
Yeah, we do as well. And hopefully for any students or parents, educators, whomever is listening to this podcast, they can take some good feedback and hopefully make some reform in their lives and get some more free time.
Exactly. Even one small change, that's sometimes all it takes, is just start with something small that you can change in your day-to-day life. So it was my pleasure joining you, Aaron. Thank you so much.